Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I would like to raise a question to the audience. Who of you believe that Germany will legalize adult use cannabis within the next 2 years? Please raise your hands. All right, that's more or less the half. Who of you believe that Germany won't legalize adult use cannabis within the next 2 years? That's only very few people. Let's see whether we can help the undecisive to find your mind in the next hour. Currently, the whole world looks at Germany. Luxembourg did a backflip last year due to European law, they said. So I'm very curious to discuss with Kristine Lütke, spokesperson of FDP regarding addiction and drug policy, about how Germany will make this magic happen and legalize adult use cannabis according, or maybe even not according, to international law and especially to EU law. Let's find out. Thank you for your time, Kristine.
Yes, thank you for having me here today, and I'm very glad that I can take part of today's conference, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yes, Kristine, let's start straight away. Your colleague, Marco Buschmann, recently said, we will have a legal adult use cannabis market in Germany beginning of next year. Do you share his opinion?
Well, I wish for the Minister of Health, Karl Lauterbach, to introduce us a first reference for the reference draft for the new law for the legalization of adult use of recreational cannabis in Germany until the end of this year. And that is an important step. And if that step is taken, I am quite optimistic that we will legalize cannabis within this legislative period. But as you know, the whole matter is very complex, so we have to take a lot of things into account, and it's not an easy law to draft because there are several ministries involved, and we have to coordinate things, and there is the question of European law still to be solved. And we also have to take care to make clear what can be sold, where, to whom, and also matters of supply chains.
From my point of view, it's a good decision to be a bit vague. We have seen many predictions in the past in the cannabis industry, which afterwards hadn't been that precise. So let's first focus on the draft of the law end of the year. But we have other big macroeconomic topics currently. COVID, Ukraine war, inflation. How do these big challenges of our time affect the draft of the law, which is what you've already said, a very complex issue?
Yeah, besides all those challenges and crises you mentioned, we as the Traffic Light Coalition, we are still willing to fulfill the tasks we gave ourselves in our coalition treaty. And the legalization of recreational cannabis is one of the things we agreed on. So we will push this topic further.
Okay, it might also be a chance. Justus Haukapp, our economic professor from Düsseldorf, said that the state might earn 4.7 billion euros and 27,000 jobs might be created. So is cannabis even more important than ever?
Well, the things you mentioned are actually one of the positive aspects of the legalization of recreational cannabis. But at this point in the process, it's quite early to have exact figures when it comes to savings or the earnings of tax revenues. And we still have to decide on how those taxes will look like in the end. And as you might know, I'm an entrepreneur myself in the field of elderly care, and I do see great possibilities for new small businesses and also for startups. And I also believe this is a great field for innovation. And I personally do hope for a kickoff for a new market with many possibilities for small and middle-sized enterprises in the fields of import, distribution, and sales.
That said, we already discussed that at the end, the health minister, Karl Lauterbach, is in the driver's seat. And that, from what I've heard recently, not everyone was that happy about the progress so far. Though the policy process has speeded up slightly. We have hearings which had been initiated, 200 experts will be heard. The hearings will end this week. But to be very honest, how happy are people in the coalition currently with the work of the health minister?
Well, I am very glad that we actually started the legalization process a few weeks ago, and we right now are seriously working on it. And one of the reasons I couldn't come in person to London is that right at the minute that we have the expert hearings in the Ministry of Health taking place, and where we have all those experts discussing various little details of the complex matter of the legalization. And it still is a really complex process. So we have to think a lot of things through and coordinate between the different ministries. And therefore, I think we shouldn't rush things too much, because we want to do it properly, and it doesn't help anyone if we run out of breath on the last meters. So we have to think through the whole process and have to coordinate so that we can control the distribution and can implement the legalization in a consequent way.
Yes, rushing things would not help anyone. We have seen that with the cultivation license when they had been cancelled afterwards due to a law. So totally understand that. And what you've just mentioned is, of course, super interesting for the audience. That you're currently in the discussion. I mean, the Social Democrats had been in favor of pilot projects until the elections. They've changed their mind. Mr. Lauterbach just said that again. But I assume that you still have quite a few differences within the coalition. Can you give us a few insights about where you are not on the same page?
Well, we have a few differences, but we are still talking. And as for my part, I received the work with my colleagues from the Social Democrats and the Green Party, as well as with the Drug Commissioner, Burkhard Blinert, as very trust and respectful. And we are looking on the things not only as a matter of market, but also how to overcome the prohibition policy of the last decades, because we state that this prohibition policy, it did not work out in the end. So we have the matters of youth and health protections right in the focus. And yes, we are not arguing, but still discussing some things like, is there a way to have people make or have their cannabis homegrown, and where to sell cannabis, but we are still not, I cannot give you so much information on that, but because we're still talking about things and still discussing.
Okay, but maybe you can give some, maybe you can just share your personal mind about a few things, what you would like to favor. For example, would you say we need a limited number of amount of dispensaries, or let's see if it's pharmacies, sales shops, or do you want a free market which decides how much infrastructure, sales infrastructure is necessary? Just your personal share.
Well, I'm convinced that it will be crucial for the success of the legalization process that in that moment that cannabis for recreational use for adults is legal, we need to provide enough legal cannabis to meet the needs of the market and the consumers. And therefore, I am counting on the private companies to open up this new market.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, the market will highly depend on the nationwide sales infrastructure. Otherwise, there's no chance to defeat the illicit market. Let's see what the final draft will say. Another issue which bothers many medical companies is the federal differences of regulation. Do you think that we will have a nationwide law with same rules for everyone, or will there be cities or states which make their own laws and make it easier or more difficult for cannabis campus within different regions of Germany?
Well, we are working on a whole project, and we want to have the legalization nationwide and not differentiated between the different regions, because I think we have to have an overall draft so we can push back the illicit market better.
And the Bundesrat won't be an issue in this case?
The Bundesrat is still an issue, but this is just to mention how complex the process is and how well organized we have to be, and and all the things we have to think through are there also. So we are taking it seriously, because we want to convince also people that are not so happy with the legalization process. So we are doing our best on working seriously on that matter.
For those of you who are not so much involved with the policy process in Germany, after the Bundestag drafts a law, the Bundesrat still is able to is still involved in this policy-making progress, which is most likely the case with a new cannabis law, right?
Yes, I think we will have the Bundesrat the Bundesrat has to be involved, I guess, yeah.
Okay. You've mentioned the hearings which have started and which you're also discussing. The first round took place, and there will be like the last one end of June. Can you give us a brief feedback how, I know it's super still confidential, but a brief feedback about the process, a few insights, first enlightenment?
Well, the hearings are taking place right at the moment, and today it's more the issues on the economic things we have to talk about, but as those hearings are confidential, I cannot disclose any details right at the moment. So, but the hearing on this Thursday, the 30th of June, is an official hearing which is open for public as well. So maybe some of you might be interested taking part in that hearing, and the issue will be the best practice examples from other nations, what can be used in Germany as well, and what shouldn't be done. Like maybe, for example, in the Netherlands, we are not trying, well, we are not aiming that we have a system like in the Netherlands, but more like maybe Colorado or California.
But overall, you're happy with the process of the hearings? You think it's the right approach? I mean, 200 expats being involved in the process might also overcomplicate things. That's not the case so far.
No, I don't think we overcomplicate the case. I think we have to think through all those different aspects, and we also have to have in mind that there has to be and there will be regulation as well, because we have the aim of the protection of the youth and the health protection and the consumer protection. So we need some regulation, and we have to find out, looking at all those different aspects, how we can have the regulation and still meet the needs of the industry and the market. So it is good that we have a look on a lot of details and different aspects. So we will not at the end of the process stand there and say, well, we haven't heard of that yet.
Okay, so in this case, in German we say, zu viele Köche verderben den Brei. I don't know how to translate this one, but in this case, it doesn't seem to be this way. It's a lot of input which is relevant for this complicated process. You mentioned that Mr. Blinert also stated, I mean, you stated it yourself, overall aim is not to create a big market with a lot of business opportunity, but to protect minors, to educate consumers, and to guarantee product safety. How much regulation will be needed, and how much free market in the end, because you're also competing with an illicit market price of 10 euros, and if it's higher, then I assume that consumers will stick just to their dealer without any product quality.
Well, I think we still have to work out the balance between the regulation and the needs of the market and the industry, but we are working on that, having the aims of pushing back the illicit market on the one hand, and on the other hand, the protection of minors and health issues as well. So we are really discussing how we can keep the balance between those two aspects.
But we will have a market in the end with business opportunities, and not like in Canada, in some districts we had also state operators. There will be a more or less regulated market, and business will take over the supply chain.
Yes, because in the coalition treaty we agreed on licensed dispensaries. So within these licenses we determine who and to what conditions those that apply for and hold a license can import, distribute and sell legal cannabis for recreational use, and therefore we count also on the private companies to build up and develop the market.
Kristine, it's been such a pleasure to discuss with you, and I'm not through and done with my questions. We have to repeat our session once again to finish. But I would like to ask you one last question. We have the UN Single Convention, which you might ignore or not ignore. We have European law. I mean, you know, Article 71 of the Schengen Agreement, you know, the Council framework from 2004, which clearly state that due to European law, member states need basically to punish all businesses related to cannabis. And then we have the big question of import-export, supply 400 tons might be there. Which is the biggest challenge you face? I mean, you mentioned it's complex, but what is really the biggest thing you need to handle within all three coalition partners?
Yes, well, I think the biggest issue still is the UN Single Convention and the Schengen Agreement. So we have to find our Ministry of Justice, working together with the Ministry of Economics and the Foreign Ministry. They are working on that issue to find a legally secure and good functioning way to solve the issue. And then we also have to build up the production. So this might take some time as well, because I still think it is really important that at the moment we say, well, now if we can sell legal cannabis, we do have to provide enough cannabis which is of good quality and which is safe. So we won't have the rush to the illicit market. So these are the two issues I personally think that are the most important to solve yet.
But you didn't talk to your Luxembourg colleagues yet what the Commission told them when they wanted to legalize.
Yes, we are taking, of course, into account the experience of the other countries, and we're always looking for the best practice solutions, and we try to learn from the mistakes of the others. But still, I think our Ministry of Justice, together with the Ministry of Economics and the Foreign Ministry, they will find a way to solve the issue in the end, because our aim is the legalization and not only the decriminalization.
Kristine, thank you so much. I wish you all the best in this hard policy progress, and let's hope that you will draft a law which will be a role model for Luxembourg, Malta, Spain, whatever, all across Europe, and that many other European countries will follow your work and your hard thinking. Maybe the time you invest now will pay back later on in many European countries. Thank you so much, Kristine.
Yes, thank you.